Number 22 on our list takes us to the heart of Prague, where Gothic spires reach into the sky and centuries of Czech history are carved into stone and glass. St. Vitus Cathedral isn't just the largest and most important church in the country, it's the spiritual heart of the Czech nation. Construction of this architectural marvel began in 1344, under the patronage of King Charles IV, who later became the Holy Roman Emperor. The cathedral was built to be a statement of power, faith, and national pride, meant to rival the great cathedrals of France and Germany. It took nearly 600 years to complete. What began in the High Gothic style was later finished with Baroque and Neo-Gothic touches, a blend of eras that tells its own story of resilience and transformation. Inside, light filters through some of the most stunning stained glass windows in Europe, none more iconic than the window designed by Czech Art Nouveau master Alphonse Mucha. His work blends Slavic saints with bold colors and flowing forms, turning faith into visual poetry. But the spiritual pull of the cathedral goes beyond beauty. It houses the tombs of Bohemian kings, saints, and emperors, including Charles IV himself and Saint Wenceslas, the beloved patron saint of the Czech lands. The Chapel of Saint Wenceslas is a place where myth and reverence meet. Legend says that if the Czech nation is in danger, the crown jewels, hidden deep within the cathedral, will only be retrieved by a chosen set of guardians. In fact, the crown chamber where the royal jewels are kept requires 7 keys, held by 7 different high-ranking officials, and can only be opened when all 7 are present together. The crown itself is said to carry a curse. Anyone who places it on their head without rightful claim is doomed to die within a year. But the cathedral is not only about the distant past. Its soaring bell tower offers one of the most breathtaking views of Prague, drawing over 1 million visitors each year. The massive bell, Zikmund, has tolled during moments of both tragedy and triumph, from wars and fires to the fall of communism in 1989. St. Vitus Cathedral is not just a place of worship, it's a living chronicle of Czech identity. Every stone, every relic, every echo beneath its vaulted ceilings carries the weight of history. Here, the past is not silent. It sings through the arches, whispers through stained glass, and lingers in the footsteps of every visitor who walks its sacred ground.
Number 21 on our list brings us to the heart of Vienna, where centuries of Habsburg grandeur, Gothic splendor, and national pride rise from the cobblestone square in one soaring masterpiece. St. Stephen's Cathedral, known locally as Stephansdom, is not just a church, it's the soul of Vienna. Its story begins in the 12th century, when the original Romanesque church was consecrated in 1147. Over the next 300 years, that modest structure grew into the towering Gothic monument we see today. Through wars, fires, plagues, and political upheaval, St. Stephen's has stood watch over the Austrian capital, its south tower, known as the Steflo, becoming one of the city's most iconic silhouettes. The cathedral's roof is an artwork in itself. Covered in over 230,000 glazed tiles, it displays the imperial double-headed eagle and the coats of arms of Vienna and Austria. It shimmers in sunlight, a dazzling contrast to the stone facade below. But beauty is only one part of its legend. Beneath the cathedral lies a darker story. A vast network of catacombs stretches out under the square, once used to bury victims of the Black Plague, now housing the remains of over 11,000 people. The Habsburgs once kept their internal organs in urns here, part of a royal tradition that separated the heart, body, and soul. Visitors can still descend into these crypts, where the silence speaks volumes. Legends swirl around every corner. One tale says that during the Turkish siege of Vienna in 1683, Ottoman forces plotted to destroy the cathedral by tunneling beneath it with explosives. A captured spy revealed the plan just in time, saving the church and, some say, the city itself. Another story tells of a brave priest who refused to flee when Allied bombs struck in World War II. He stayed behind and helped prevent a fire from reaching the roof, a heroic act that preserved the cathedral's most precious features. One of those features is the Pomeran, a massive bell cast from melted Turkish cannons. Originally hung in the North Tower, it was destroyed during the war but recast and rehung in the new tower after 1951. Today, its deep toll marks Austria's most important national events, from New Year's Eve to moments of mourning and remembrance. Inside, every altar, every statue, every whisper of incense carries a part of Vienna's soul. Mozart was married here. He also had his funeral here, though he was buried in an unmarked grave outside the city. St. Stephen's holds the memories of emperors and composers, saints and sinners, wrapped in centuries of devotion and drama. To this day, the cathedral is not just a destination for tourists. It is a living, breathing center of Austrian spiritual life. As millions pass through its doors each year, they do more than admire its splendor, they walk into the heartbeat of a nation. Number 20 on our list is tucked away in the medieval heart of Bruges, a city where time seems to stand still. Amid the narrow cobblestone alleys and storybook facades lies the Basilica of the Holy Blood, one of the most mysterious and sacred pilgrimage sites in Europe. From the outside, it appears modest, almost hidden. But step inside, and the basilica reveals a world of devotion, history, and legend. It is actually two chapels in one. The lower Romanesque chapel, dark and solemn, dates back to the 12th century. The upper chapel, richly decorated in Gothic style, tells a much more dramatic story. At the center of it all is a single relic, a vial said to contain drops of the blood of Jesus Christ. According to tradition, the relic was brought back to Bruges after the Second Crusade by Thierry of Alsace, Count of Flanders. He is believed to have received it from the Patriarch of Jerusalem as a reward for his bravery. Whether this legend is historically accurate or not, the relic quickly became a symbol of deep reverence for the people of Bruges. Over the centuries, stories about the relic have taken on a life of their own. Some believe it miraculously liquefied at various times in history, much like similar relics elsewhere in Europe.
Others tell of how the blood protected the city during times of war and plague. During the French Revolution, when anti-clerical forces swept through Belgium, the relic was hidden to protect it from destruction. It was only returned once peace had been restored, adding another layer to its mythos. Every year, on Ascension Day, Bruges hosts the Procession of the Holy Blood, one of the oldest and most elaborate religious pageants in Europe. Thousands of participants reenact biblical scenes and historical episodes, culminating in the solemn parade of the relic through the streets. The entire city seems to turn into a living tableau of faith, tradition, and pride. The Basilica itself is a testament to this devotion. Inside, the Chapel of the Holy Blood is richly adorned with stained glass, gold leaf, and intricate murals that tell the story of the relic's journey. The reliquary, a dazzling rock crystal vial encased in gold and silver, sits in a place of honor, occasionally brought out for veneration by pilgrims from around the world. Beyond its religious significance, the Basilica of the Holy Blood is also a mirror of Bruges itself, a city where the sacred and the medieval exist side by side. It is not the grandest cathedral on this list, nor the tallest. But its quiet power lies in its mystery. In the stories whispered by candlelight. In the steps of centuries of believers who have come seeking a glimpse of something eternal. Here, the line between legend and belief blurs. And for those who visit, the experience becomes more than just a moment in time, it becomes part of a story that has been unfolding for nearly 1,000 years. Number 19 on our list towers above the old town of Strasbourg, its single spire rising like a needle into the sky. For more than 200 years, Strasbourg Cathedral was the tallest building in the world, a marvel of medieval engineering, faith, and ambition. Even today, it's one of the most awe-inspiring examples of Gothic architecture in all of Europe. The story of the cathedral begins in the 11th century with the Romanesque church built on the ruins of earlier religious sites. But in 1176, the vision shifted dramatically. Builders turned to the Gothic style, reaching higher and crafting more intricate designs. The sandstone facade, carved in red and pink hues from the nearby Vosges Mountains, glows differently depending on the time of day, soft and golden at dawn, deep and fiery at sunset. Construction stretched across centuries, shaped by changing tastes, political upheaval, and divine inspiration. By 1439, the North Tower was complete, soaring 142 meters into the air. The South Tower was never built, but the asymmetry became part of its iconic silhouette. The spire itself was not just a feat of architecture, but a symbol of power, spiritual and civic. For Strasbourg, it meant prestige. For pilgrims and travelers, it was a beacon for miles. Inside, the cathedral is a sanctuary of light and legend. Its famous rose window casts kaleidoscopic patterns onto the stone floor, while soaring columns lead the eye upward in awe. One of the most astonishing features is the astronomical clock, built in the 16th century. This intricate mechanical wonder not only tells time, it tracks the phases of the moon, the movement of the planets,
and even marks the procession of the apostles at noon every day. But beyond its beauty and mechanics, Strasbourg Cathedral is steeped in myth. One enduring legend tells of the devil himself, who circled the cathedral in fury after being outwitted by a clever craftsman. It is said he entered the building through a crack in the stone, and that his breath can still be felt near the swirling wind at the Pillar of the Angels. Others speak of secret codes carved into the stonework, messages from the builders that remain undeciphered to this day. The cathedral has withstood centuries of conflict. During the Protestant Reformation, it briefly became a Protestant church. In times of war and revolution, it was looted, damaged, protected, and restored. In World War II, its stained glass windows were hidden away in salt mines by French curators to prevent them from being stolen or destroyed. They were returned after the war, survivors of both time and turmoil. Today, Strasbourg Cathedral welcomes around 1 million visitors each year. But it remains more than just a tourist attraction. It is a living symbol of a city that has straddled empires, languages, and faiths. A place where the sacred and the artistic collide in soaring arches, silent stones, and stories that have echoed through the centuries. Number 18 on our list brings us to the historic city of Reims in the heart of the Champagne region, where one of the most important cathedrals in French history rises in breathtaking Gothic splendor. Reims Cathedral, officially known as the Cathedral of Notre-Dame de Reims, is not just a masterpiece of architecture, it is the cradle of French monarchy. It was here, in this very cathedral, that nearly every French king was crowned for over 800 years. The tradition began in 1027 with the coronation of King Henry I and continued until 1825, when Charles X became the last monarch to receive the crown in Reims. The reason for this tradition reaches back even further, to 496 AD, when Clovis, the first Christian king of the Franks, was baptized in Reims. According to legend, a dove descended from heaven bearing a vial of holy oil, Le Saint Crème, used for the anointing. That sacred oil was preserved and used in every royal coronation to follow, linking each new king to divine authority. The cathedral standing today was built starting in 1211, after a fire destroyed the earlier church. The new design was grander, more ambitious, and a reflection of France's growing power. Its west facade is a riot of sculpture, saints, kings, angels, and biblical scenes carved in stone. Among them is the famous smiling angel, whose gentle expression has captivated visitors for centuries and come to symbolize the spirit of Reims itself. Inside, the cathedral is a harmony of height and light. Towering columns draw the eye upward, while the stained glass windows, some of which date back to the 13th century, bathe the interior in rich, jeweled colors. In the 20th century, artist Marc Chagall added a modern touch with his dreamy, vibrant glass panels in the apse, creating a poetic bridge between past and present. But Reims Cathedral has known its share of tragedy. During World War I, it was shelled relentlessly by German forces. Fire raged through the timber roof, molten lead rained down on the floor, and statues crumbled. The devastation shocked the world and became a symbol of cultural loss. Yet the people of France were determined to restore it. With painstaking care and international support, the cathedral was rebuilt, stone by stone, pane by pane, and returned to its former glory. Today, Reims Cathedral is more than a historical monument. It is a symbol of French resilience, faith, and identity. Every pillar echoes the footsteps of kings, every window reflects centuries of devotion, and every visitor walks through a space where history was not just observed, but made. In Reims, the sacred meets the royal. And in this cathedral, France remembers who it was, and who it still is. Number 17 on our list stands as one of the oldest and most storied Christian sites in England. Canterbury Cathedral, the spiritual heart of the Church of England and Anglicanism worldwide, has witnessed over 1,400 years of faith, power, and pilgrimage. The origins of the cathedral date back to 597 AD, when Saint Augustine arrived from Rome to convert the Anglo-Saxons. He became the first Archbishop of Canterbury and established his seat here. The modest beginnings of that early church evolved over the centuries into a vast, awe-inspiring structure, with elements of Romanesque, Gothic, and perpendicular design layered one atop another like chapters in a book. But what forever etched Canterbury Cathedral into history was an act of violence that shocked medieval Europe. On a cold December evening in 1170, Archbishop Thomas Becket was murdered inside the cathedral by 4 knights of King Henry II. The king had grown frustrated with Becket's opposition to royal influence over the church. Whether he truly meant for the knights to take lethal action is debated to this day, but the result was undeniable. Blood was spilled on sacred ground, and the martyrdom of Thomas Becket ignited a wave of devotion across the continent. Almost overnight, the cathedral became a major pilgrimage destination. Pilgrims arrived from all corners of Christendom, hoping for healing and miracles at the site of Becket's shrine. Geoffrey Chaucer would immortalize their journeys in his famous collection of stories, the Canterbury Tales, written in the late 14th century. The tales transformed the idea of pilgrimage from a solemn duty into something deeply human, filled with humor, faith, and longing. The cathedral's architecture tells its own story of faith and ambition. The soaring nave, begun in the 14th century, leads toward the Trinity Chapel, where Becket's golden shrine once stood. Though it was destroyed during the English Reformation by order of Henry VIII, the place still pulses with reverence. Surrounding it are medieval stained glass windows, some of the oldest in Britain, depicting scenes of miracles attributed to Becket, royal visits, and biblical episodes. Beneath the cathedral lies its crypt, a place of hushed beauty and ancient carvings. This is the oldest surviving part of the structure, with rounded Romanesque arches and dim candlelight that seem to echo with centuries of whispered prayers. Canterbury Cathedral has also played a central role in British history. It has seen coronations and councils, war and peace, and served as a beacon of spiritual leadership through civil wars, religious schisms, and national renewal.
In modern times, it continues to host royal services and global gatherings, standing not just as a place of worship but as a symbol of moral conscience. To walk through Canterbury Cathedral is to step into a sacred narrative. A story of faith challenged and renewed. Of kings and saints. Of pilgrims seeking something greater than themselves. And in its stones, arches, and shadows, that story still speaks to all who enter. Number 16 on our list stands as one of the most historically significant cathedrals in all of Europe. Aken Cathedral is not only Germany's first UNESCO World Heritage Site, it's a symbol of imperial ambition, medieval spirituality, and enduring legend. The story of Aken begins with one man, Charlemagne. Around the year 800, he chose Aken as the capital of his vast Frankish empire, and he envisioned a cathedral that would rival the greatest structures of ancient Rome. What rose from his vision was the Palatine Chapel, the heart of today's cathedral, an octagonal marvel unlike anything else in Northern Europe at the time. Charlemagne's chapel was inspired by Roman and Byzantine styles. He brought in marble columns from Italy, mosaic artists from Ravenna, and craftsmen from across his empire. At its center stood a massive dome, a bold engineering feat for the age. The result was a building that radiated imperial power and divine favor. In 814, Charlemagne was buried here, and his tomb became a destination for pilgrims and kings alike. His legacy lived on not only in legend, but also in tradition. From 936 to 1531, no fewer than 30 German kings were crowned here in Aken Cathedral. The coronation throne, known as Charlemagne's throne, still stands in the gallery above the nave, worn smooth by centuries of ceremonial use. The myths surrounding Charlemagne are woven deeply into the fabric of the cathedral. One legend tells of how he made a pact with the devil to complete construction. When the devil demanded the soul of the first person to enter, the townspeople tricked him by sending in a wolf. Furious at being deceived, the devil supposedly slammed the great bronze doors, leaving his thumbprint in the lion head handle, a mark that can still be seen today. Over the centuries, the cathedral expanded beyond the original chapel. Gothic additions brought soaring arches and delicate windows. The choir was added in the 14th century, housing one of the most stunning reliquaries in Europe, the Shrine of Charlemagne, crafted in glittering gold and studded with precious stones. Aken Cathedral also holds 4 great relics, including what is said to be the cloak of the Virgin Mary and the swaddling clothes of the infant Jesus. These sacred items are displayed only once every 7 years during a special pilgrimage known as the Heiligtumsfeier, drawing hundreds of thousands of worshippers from around the world. Despite wars, revolutions, and natural decay, Aken Cathedral has endured. It survived both world wars with minimal damage, thanks to careful protection and sheer luck. Today, it continues to function as a working church, a monument of European unity, and a living link to a time when emperors ruled by divine right and faith shaped the fate of nations. To
step inside Aken Cathedral is to step into the very foundation of European identity. It is where politics, piety, myth, and memory converge under a single, soaring dome, echoing with the footsteps of kings and the prayers of pilgrims through more than 12 centuries of history. Number 15 on our list is one of the most iconic silhouettes in the world. Rising above the rooftops of Florence, the red-tiled dome of the Florence Cathedral, known locally as the Duomo, represents not only a triumph of architecture, but the spirit of the Renaissance itself. The story begins in the late 13th century, when Florence was booming as a center of trade, art, and banking. Determined to build a cathedral worthy of its growing power, the city commissioned a massive structure dedicated to Santa Maria del Fiore, Saint Mary of the Flower. The cathedral was designed to be the largest in the world, with space for tens of thousands of worshippers. But the true challenge lay in its ambitious dome. For years, construction of the dome was delayed because no one knew how to build such a vast structure without wooden scaffolding, a method that would collapse under its own weight. Then came Filippo Brunelleschi, a goldsmith with no formal architectural training, who proposed a daring and revolutionary solution. Using a herringbone brick pattern, internal ribs, and a system of horizontal and vertical support, Brunelleschi raised the dome without scaffolding, an engineering feat that defied the knowledge of his time. Completed in 1436, the dome remains the largest masonry vault in the world. It stands not only as an architectural marvel, but as a symbol of human ingenuity and the birth of modern engineering. The crowning lantern and copper ball were added later, giving the cathedral its unmistakable profile against the Tuscan sky. Inside, the vast interior contrasts with the ornate facades of other cathedrals. It is austere, echoing with silence and history. But look upward, and the dome tells a cosmic story, an enormous fresco of the Last Judgment painted by Giorgio Vasari and Federico Zuccari in the 16th century. Angels, demons, saints, and sinners spiral toward heaven or fall into hell, drawing every eye to the heavens above. The cathedral's bell tower, or campanile, was designed by the painter Giotto and remains one of Italy's finest examples of Gothic architecture. Clad in white, green, and pink marble, it complements the cathedral and baptistery nearby, forming one of the most beautiful and harmonious religious complexes in Europe. The nearby baptistery of San Giovanni is another piece of the story. Its bronze doors, dubbed the Gates of Paradise by Michelangelo, depict scenes from the Old Testament with breathtaking detail. These doors and the Duomo itself would inspire generations of artists, including Leonardo da Vinci, who once studied their form. Legend also has its place here. One tale tells of Brunelleschi's stubborn secrecy during the dome's construction. He refused to reveal his full plan, fearing others would steal his idea. When questioned by city officials, he answered only with riddles and challenges, forcing them to choose between trusting his genius or abandoning the project altogether. Today, the Florence Cathedral is not just the soul of Florence, it is one of the great masterpieces of Western civilization. Each year, over 1 million visitors climb its narrow stairs, touch its cool marble, and gaze out from its dome across a city that once gave birth to the modern world. To stand at the heart of the Duomo is to feel the pulse of a city that believed beauty could transform humanity. A cathedral not only built for worship, but for wonder. Number 14 on our list rises above the skyline of London with a dome that has come to symbolize endurance, elegance, and the soul of a nation. St. Paul's Cathedral is not just an architectural triumph, it is the beating heart of London's spiritual and civic identity. The current cathedral was built after one of the most devastating events in the city's history, the Great Fire of London in 1666. The medieval St. Paul's had stood for centuries, but it was reduced to rubble in the flames. In the ashes, a bold new vision emerged. The architect Sir Christopher Wren was tasked with designing something entirely new, something that would reflect the grandeur of a renewed London. What he created was revolutionary. Blending Baroque elegance with classical influence, Wren crowned his design with a vast dome inspired by St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Rising 111 meters, it became the tallest building in London for over 250 years. Even today, it remains one of the largest cathedral domes in the world. To climb to the top is to see London unfold in every direction, a view once described as the eye of history itself. St. Paul's has stood at the center of major national moments. It was here that Lord Nelson was laid to rest after his victory at Trafalgar. Here that the nation gathered to mourn Winston Churchill. Here that Prince Charles and Princess Diana were married in a globally televised ceremony. And it was here, after the horrors of the Blitz in World War II, that St. Paul's became a symbol of unshakable hope. One of the most iconic photographs of the 20th century shows the cathedral dome rising above the smoke and ruin of bombed London, untouched. It seemed miraculous. In truth, a dedicated team of volunteers worked through the night during air raids to protect it, often climbing onto the roof to extinguish fires. For the people of London, it meant that even in the darkest days, something sacred had endured. Inside, the cathedral is a place of solemn beauty. The Whispering Gallery, encircling the inner dome, is famed for its curious acoustics. Whispers on one side can be heard clearly on the other. The crypt below holds the tombs of national heroes like Nelson, Wellington, and Wren himself, whose modest inscription reads, "If you seek his monument, look around you." St. Paul's has always been more than a church. It is a place where the sacred and the civic intersect. Its steps have hosted protests, celebrations, and quiet contemplation. In its walls echo centuries of sermons, debates, and prayers for peace. Legends linger too. Some say the cathedral was built on an ancient temple to Diana. Others whisper of secret messages hidden in Wren's geometries. While those stories remain unproven, the real wonder is in what stands before our eyes, a cathedral born of fire and faith. whose dome continues to rise above the city, inviting all to look upward and remember what endures. Number 13 on our list is the largest Gothic cathedral in the world, and one of the most awe-inspiring monuments in all of Spain. Seville Cathedral, officially known as the Cathedral of Saint Mary of the Sea, is not just a place of worship, it is a statement of ambition, faith, conquest, and artistic glory. Its origins are steeped in a dramatic transformation. In the late 12th century, this site was home to a grand mosque, built during the Almohad period when Muslim rule stretched across much of the Iberian Peninsula. The mosque's minaret, known as the Giralda, still stands today, one of the most iconic symbols of Seville. When Christian forces reconquered the city in 1248, the mosque was consecrated as a cathedral. But centuries later, a new vision took hold. In 1401, the city's leaders decided to build a cathedral so magnificent that, in their words, those who see it finished will think we were mad. And they succeeded. The scale is staggering. The interior is a forest of towering columns and ribbed vaults, rising into an immense central nave. Light filters in through intricate stained glass windows, dancing across gold-leafed altars and carved wooden choir stalls. One of the most breathtaking features is the retableau mayor, the largest and richest altarpiece in Christendom. It took nearly a century to complete and depict scenes from the life of Christ in extraordinary detail, all framed in glittering gold. Standing before it feels like being dwarfed by heaven itself. Among the most visited parts of the cathedral is the tomb of Christopher Columbus. His coffin is dramatically held aloft by four heraldic figures representing the kingdoms of Castile, Leon, Aragon, and Navarre. Controversy has surrounded his final resting place for years, with competing claims from the Dominican Republic and other sites, but DNA tests have confirmed that at least part of his remains lie here in Seville. The Giralda Tower is another highlight, seamlessly blending Islamic and Christian heritage. Originally a minaret, it was adapted into a bell tower after the Reconquista. Unlike typical towers, it has a ramp system instead of stairs, designed to allow a rider on horseback to ascend to the top. Climbing it offers a panoramic view of Seville's orange rooftops, winding streets, and distant hills. Legends swirl around the cathedral. One tells of a massive emerald once embedded in the central cross, said to have been a gift from the Americas brought back by Columbus himself. Another speaks of hidden treasures buried beneath the cathedral's foundations, protected by ancient curses. Though unproven, these tales add an air of mystery to the vast stone sanctuary. More than just a religious site, Seville Cathedral is a symbol of the city's layered identity: Moorish, Christian, Imperial, and Andalusian. It has hosted royal weddings, funerals, and processions for centuries. During Holy Week, its massive doors open to let through some of Spain's most emotional and elaborate religious parades. To walk through Seville Cathedral is to travel through time, from Islamic artistry to Gothic ambition, from colonial conquest to modern reverence. It is a cathedral built to outlast time itself, and to leave anyone who enters with a sense of wonder too large for words.
Number 12 on our list is a vision in white marble, a forest of spires reaching toward the sky, and one of the most ambitious cathedrals ever attempted. The Milan Cathedral, or Duomo di Milano, is not only the largest church in Italy, it is a testament to perseverance, faith, and the relentless pursuit of beauty. The story begins in 1386, when Giangalizzo Visconti, the Duke of Milan, announced the construction of a grand cathedral that would rival any in Europe. He envisioned a structure so magnificent it would inspire awe in all who saw it. Construction began with enormous ambition, and it would not be completed for nearly 6 centuries. Built in the flamboyant Gothic style, the Duomo defies easy description. Its facade is carved like lace from bright white Conduglia marble. It shimmers in the daylight and glows under sunset skies. Over 3,400 statues adorn the cathedral, more than any other building in the world, depicting saints, martyrs, mythical beasts, and even ordinary citizens. Each one tells a story in stone. But nothing captures the imagination like the spires. There are 135 of them, each crowned with delicate pinnacles and sculptures. At the very top stands the cathedral's most beloved symbol, the Madonna, a gilded statue of the Virgin Mary placed in 1774. She watches over Milan from nearly 110 meters above ground, her presence so revered that for many years, no building in the city was allowed to rise higher than her crown. Inside, the Duomo is equally breathtaking. Massive pillars soar to a vaulted ceiling nearly 45 meters high. Light filters through stained glass windows, some of which date back to the 15th century, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the stone floor. The effect is solemn and majestic, reminding visitors that this is not just a monument, it is a living place of worship. Deep beneath the cathedral lies the crypt of Saint Charles Borromeo, a cardinal and counter-Reformation figure who is buried here in a crystal coffin. His legacy is closely tied to the cathedral's identity, and pilgrims still visit his resting place to seek inspiration and healing. Legends swirl through the marble halls. One tells of a mysterious red light that shines above the altar, a spot said to mark the place where one of the nails from Christ's crucifixion is preserved. Every year, in a solemn ritual known as the Rite of the Nivola, the relic is brought down from its lofty perch using a mechanical lift designed in the 16th century. The Duomo also holds traces of Napoleon Bonaparte, who was crowned King of Italy here in 1805. It is said he insisted the facade be completed in time for his coronation, an order that brought a flurry of construction after centuries of delays. Even today, some finishing work continues, as the marble is constantly cleaned, replaced, and restored to maintain the Duomo's brilliance. Milan Cathedral is not just a church, it is a collective masterpiece built over generations. Architects, sculptors, and stonecutters from across Europe left their mark on it. And despite wars, political changes, and centuries of evolution, the cathedral still rises, faithful to its original vision of heavenly grandeur carved in stone. To stand on its rooftop, amid the spires and statues, with the Alps visible in the distance, is to understand why this cathedral is one of the most visited and beloved in the world. Number 11 on our list is not only a place of prayer, but a beacon, watching over a city that has welcomed sailors, traders, and wanderers for centuries. Perched high above Marseille on a limestone outcrop, Notre-Dame de la Garde is more than a cathedral. It is the soul of the city. Marseille is France's oldest city, founded by Greek settlers over 2,600 years ago. For centuries, sailors arriving from the Mediterranean would glimpse the golden statue of the Virgin Mary atop this basilica before they ever saw the port. She stands with her child in one arm and a protective gesture with the other. Locals simply call her La Bonne Mère, the Good Mother. Her presence is deeply woven into the city's identity. The site has long been a sacred one. Even before Christianity took root, a watchtower stood on this hill, serving as a lookout point for invading ships. In 1214, a small chapel was built here, dedicated to the Virgin Mary. But the basilica we see today was constructed in the 19th century, between 1853 and 1864, during a time of great expansion in Marseille. Designed in the Romano-Byzantine style, its striped stone walls and intricate mosaics reflect the city's blend of European, African, and Mediterranean influences. The basilica's interior is an explosion of color and detail. Gilded mosaics cover the domed ceilings, depicting scenes of devotion and divine protection. Maritime symbols are everywhere, anchors, ships, and fish woven into the walls and floors. It is a sailor's church in every way. But perhaps most touching are the ex-voto's thousands of offerings left behind by those who survived shipwrecks, wars, and illness. Small plagues, model boats, military medals, even photos of newborns. Each one a silent thank you. A prayer answered. A life spared. The basilica is filled with these stories, quietly displayed along its side chapels. During both World Wars, Notre-Dame de la Garde became a symbol of hope and survival. In World War II, the hill became a battleground during the liberation of Marseille. The basilica was damaged but never destroyed. When the fighting ended, its golden statue remained intact, a miracle in the eyes of many locals. The view from the top is unforgettable. The entire city of Marseille spreads out below, terracotta rooftops, the bustling old port, the Frioul Islands, and the deep blue stretch of the Mediterranean. It is a place where people come not only to pray, but to reflect, to breathe, and to look out toward the horizon. Legends surround the golden statue itself. Some say it turns ever so slightly depending on the weather, subtly guiding fishermen home. Others believe that ships which pass her gaze are blessed with good fortune. Notre-Dame de la Garde is not just an architectural landmark. It is a living monument, visited by millions each year, pilgrims, tourists, and locals alike. They come to light a candle, whisper a prayer, or simply feel the quiet strength of the Good Mother above. She is more than a statue. She is the protector of Marseille. A symbol of comfort in chaos. A silent guardian watching over a city that has always looked outward to the sea, and upward for hope.
On our list rises from the heart of the Gothic quarter, surrounded by centuries of stories carved into narrow streets and ancient stones. The Cathedral of the Holy Cross and Saint Eulalia, known simply as the Barcelona Cathedral, is not just a place of worship, it is a gateway into the soul of the city. Construction began in 1298, during a time when Gothic architecture was reaching its majestic peak across Europe. But like many grand cathedrals, it took centuries to complete. The main structure was largely finished by the 15th century, yet its now famous neo-Gothic facade wasn't added until the late 19th century. In fact, what looks medieval from the front is actually a romantic reinterpretation, blending history and imagination into one dramatic silhouette. But beneath the soaring spires and intricate gargoyles lies something older and deeper. The cathedral is dedicated to Saint Eulalia, a young Christian martyr and one of Barcelona's co-patron saints. According to legend, during Roman times, Eulalia was just 13 years old when she stood up against the persecution of Christians. Her defiance led to a brutal execution, 13 tortures, one for each year of her life, including being rolled naked in the snow and finally crucified in an X-shaped cross. Her remains are buried in the cathedral's crypt, and her story echoes through the building like a whispered promise of courage. A white dove is often said to have flown from her mouth at the moment of her death, a symbol of purity and a triumph of spirit over suffering. Visitors are drawn not only by the legends but also by the living presence of history. The cloister is one of the cathedral's most beloved features. Peaceful and shaded, it surrounds a lush garden with a central fountain. And perhaps most charming of all, 13 white geese are kept here, one for each year of Eulalia's life. Their honking, echoing off the stone walls, offers a strangely comforting soundtrack to the sacred stillness. Inside, the nave stretches upward in solemn grandeur. Sunlight filters through colored glass, painting moving patterns on the worn flagstones. Each chapel tells a different story, from Gothic saints to noble benefactors to miraculous legends. During religious festivals, the cathedral becomes a vibrant center of music, candles, and ancient Catalan tradition. Top is a hidden treasure. Visitors who climb to the top are rewarded with panoramic views of the Gothic quarter, the spires of nearby churches, and even the distant shimmer of the Mediterranean. From here, Barcelona reveals itself not just as a city of modernism and art, but as a city that has lived and breathed faith for over 2,000 years. There are stories of secret tunnels beneath the cathedral, once said to be used by monks, rebels, or escaping prisoners during times of political unrest. Whether true or myth, they add to the mystery that clings to every corner of this sacred place. Though often overshadowed by the more flamboyant Sagrada Família, the Barcelona Cathedral is the quiet heart of the city. It holds the weight of centuries, the courage of saints, and the spirit of a people who have always kept their past alive in stone, song, and story. To walk through its doors is to step into the deep, unshakable roots of Barcelona itself. Number 9 on our list is not just a cathedral. It is the beating heart of British history, a place where kings and queens are crowned, poets are honored, and centuries of triumph and tragedy are remembered in stone. Welcome to Westminster Abbey, one of the most iconic religious sites in the world and a cornerstone of the United Kingdom's cultural identity. The story of Westminster Abbey begins over 1,000 years ago. According to legend, a fisherman on the River Thames witnessed a vision of St. Peter on the site in the early 7th century. Inspired by this miracle, a church was built here, but the abbey we know today was truly born under King Edward the Confessor, who began construction of a Romanesque church in 1045. He was buried there in 1066, and shortly after, the abbey became the ceremonial stage for the coronation of William the Conqueror. Since then, every English and later British monarch has been crowned in Westminster Abbey, a tradition stretching back nearly 1,000 years. The coronation chair, carved in the 13th century and still used today, sits within the Gothic arches of the abbey's nave, a silent witness to the rise and fall of dynasties, wars, and peace. The building itself is a masterpiece of Gothic architecture. Soaring vaulted ceilings, towering stained glass windows, and intricately carved stonework fill the space with both grandeur and reverence. But what truly makes Westminster Abbey extraordinary is its role as a living memorial. Nearly 3,300 people are buried or commemorated here, not just royals, but poets, scientists, and national heroes. In Poets' Corner, you'll find the names of William Shakespeare, Geoffrey Chaucer, Jane Austen, and Charles Dickens. In the Scientists' Corner, lie the remains or memorials of Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, and Stephen Hawking. This sacred space is not only a church, but a vast cultural archive etched in marble and memory. One of the most moving sights within the abbey is the tomb of the unknown warrior. Buried in 1920, the unidentified British soldier represents all those who died in World War I without a known grave. His resting place, set among kings and queens, is a powerful symbol of humility and honor. Tradition dictates that royal brides place their bouquets here in silent tribute after their weddings. And weddings there have been, most famously the marriage of Prince William and Catherine Middleton in 2011, watched by millions across the world. The Abbey also bore witness to the funeral of Princess Diana, a moment of global mourning that underscored how deeply Westminster Abbey is intertwined with the emotional life of the nation. As for myths, some believe the spirit of Edward the Confessor still roams the abbey, especially near his shrine, a sacred space that pilgrims still visit. Others speak of mysterious lights and unexplained sounds echoing in the cloisters at night, ghosts, perhaps, of the many monks who once walked in prayer. Today, Westminster Abbey remains an active church, open for daily worship, music, and reflection. But it is also a silent storyteller, a place where the threads of British history are gathered and preserved, not in textbooks but in towering stone and sacred ritual. To stand within its ancient walls is to feel the weight of a nation's past, and to understand why this extraordinary place welcomes over 3 million visitors every year.
Number 8 on our list rises from the shimmering waters of Venice like a vision from another world. With its dazzling gold mosaics, onion domes, and ornate arches, St. Mark's Basilica is not only one of the most visited cathedrals in Europe, it is a symbol of a city unlike any other. Located in the heart of Piazza San Marco, the basilica was originally built in the 9th century to house what was claimed to be the stolen remains of Saint Mark the Evangelist, one of the 4 Gospel writers. According to legend, 2 Venetian merchants smuggled his body out of Alexandria, Egypt, hiding it beneath layers of pork to keep Muslim guards from inspecting the shipment. The relics were triumphantly brought back to Venice, and a small chapel was built in his honor. But the Venice of the Middle Ages was ambitious. By the 11th century, the modest chapel was replaced by a grand basilica, built not just as a church, but as a statement. Venice was a rising maritime republic, and this cathedral was meant to proclaim its power, wealth, and divine favor. The result is a breathtaking fusion of Byzantine, Islamic, Gothic, and Renaissance architecture. The exterior alone is a visual feast: marble columns from the east, bronze horses looted from Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade, and intricate mosaics that sparkle under the Venetian sun. Each element tells a story of conquest, trade, and artistic ambition. Step inside, and you are swallowed by gold. Over 8,000 square meters of mosaics cover the ceilings and walls, many of them created with real gold leaf. Scenes from the life of Christ, the Virgin Mary, and Saint Mark unfold across the domes, glowing in candlelight like a celestial map. The floor beneath your feet is a patchwork of marble in geometric patterns, worn smooth by centuries of pilgrims and visitors. One of the basilica's greatest treasures is the Pala d'Oro, the golden altarpiece behind the high altar. Crafted in Constantinople and later enhanced by Venetian goldsmiths, it's a dazzling tableau of enamel, gems, and sacred figures. It remains one of the finest examples of Byzantine craftsmanship in the world. But legends cling to this basilica as tightly as the salt air. One tells of the disappearance of Saint Mark's remains during a fire in the 13th century. For decades, they were lost, until, during a mass in 1094, a marble column mysteriously cracked open, revealing a hidden cavity with the saint's body inside. The people of Venice took it as a miracle, a divine reminder that their protector had never truly left them. The bronze horses above the main entrance are another source of fascination. Believed to have once adorned the Hippodrome of Constantinople, they were brought to Venice in 1204. Napoleon later stole them and took them to Paris, but they were returned after his defeat.
Replicas now stand on the facade, while the originals are kept safely inside the museum to protect them from pollution and time. St. Mark's Basilica is more than a church. It is a mosaic of Venice itself, its faith, its ambition, its history carved into marble and glass. Every tile, every arch, every legend echoes the story of a city that rose from the sea to become a beacon of art, trade, and mystery. To stand within its golden glow is to feel the heartbeat of Venice across 1,000 years. Number 7 on our list is a cathedral unlike any other, a place where stone seems to grow like trees, where geometry dances with faith, and where construction is still ongoing more than 140 years after it began. This is La Sagrada Família, Barcelona's most iconic landmark and one of the most visited cathedrals in the world. The story begins in 1882, when construction started under a different architect and a very traditional neo-Gothic plan. But just 1 year later, a 31-year-old Catalan architect named Antoni Gaudí took over the project. What followed was not just the building of a church, but the birth of a vision, deeply spiritual, highly symbolic, and profoundly original. Gaudí devoted the last 43 years of his life to Sagrada Família, and it became his obsession. He lived like a hermit on site during his final years, pouring every ounce of creativity and devotion into the design. Tragically, he died in 1926 after being struck by a tram, with less than a quarter of the church completed. At his funeral, thousands lined the streets of Barcelona, and he was buried in the crypt beneath the basilica. The architecture defies classification. Gaudí combined Gothic, Art Nouveau, and organic forms inspired by nature, creating a structure that feels almost alive. Columns twist like tree trunks. Facades ripple with stone that tells stories. Every detail is layered with Christian symbolism, from the number of towers to the shapes of windows and vaults. The church has 3 grand facades: the Nativity, celebrating the birth of Christ with joyful and intricate detail; the Passion, stark and angular, depicting the suffering and crucifixion; and the Glory, still under construction, which will symbolize the road to God. Each facade presents not just a different style, but a different emotional and spiritual journey. Inside, sunlight streams through stained glass windows in a kaleidoscope of blues, oranges, and greens. The interior was designed to mimic a forest canopy, with columns branching out like trees. The acoustics and light change with the time of day, making each visit a unique experience. And then, of course, there is the myth of the endless construction. Gaudí once said, "My client is not in a hurry," referring to God. The church has been funded entirely through private donations, and for decades progress was slow. Wars, politics, and debates over Gaudí's legacy delayed the project. But in recent years, modern technology has dramatically accelerated construction. Though the pandemic delayed the original 2026 target, Gaudí's centenary, the goal of completing the basilica within the next decade, still inspires workers and visitors alike. Despite its unfinished state, Sagrada Familia was consecrated by Pope Benedict XVI in 2010, officially becoming a basilica. Yet many believe that it is precisely its incompleteness that makes it sacred, a symbol of ongoing creation, an earthly reflection of divine infinity. Visitors today are not just tourists, they are witnesses to a miracle in progress. To stand beneath the vaults, to gaze up at the evolving towers, is to understand the power of faith fused with imagination. Sagrada Familia is more than a cathedral. It is a living prayer in stone, written across generations, and one of the most awe-inspiring creations ever conceived by human hands. Number 6 on our list is not an ancient cathedral crowned with Gothic spires or Renaissance domes. Instead, it is a place born from a modern miracle, where millions gather each year in search of healing, faith, and peace. This is the sanctuary of Fatima, one of the most important pilgrimage sites in the world. The story begins in 1917, during a time of great upheaval. Europe was deep in the grip of World War I, and Portugal itself was struggling through political and social unrest. In this turbulent moment, something extraordinary happened in the small rural village of Fatima. Three shepherd children, Lucia dos Santos and her cousins Francisco and Jacinta Marto, were tending sheep when they claimed to witness a vision of a woman brighter than the sun. This woman, whom they later understood to be the Virgin Mary, appeared to them not just once, but 6 times between May and October of that year. The apparitions came with messages of repentance, prayer, and warnings about war, communism, and the fate of souls. Mary also revealed to the children what would later become known as the 3 Secrets of Fatima, a series of prophecies and visions that sparked decades of fascination, controversy, and speculation. These included a vision of hell, the prediction of World War II, and the persecution of the Church. The final apparition, on October 13, 1917, drew tens of thousands of people to the site. It was here that witnesses reported the famous miracle of the sun, where the sun appeared to spin in the sky, change colors, and zigzag toward Earth before returning to its place. Eyewitness accounts came not just from devout believers but from journalists and skeptics as well. It remains one of the most discussed religious phenomena of the 20th century. Following these events, Fatima quickly became a site of global pilgrimage. The original location of the apparitions, the Covida area, became sacred ground. By the 1920s, a small chapel had been built, followed by the Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary, completed in 1953. Its tall bell tower now stands as a symbol of devotion for pilgrims arriving from every corner of the world. Across the Grand Esplanade stands the modern Basilica of the Holy Trinity, inaugurated in 2007 to accommodate the growing crowds. With a capacity of nearly 9,000, it reflects both the humility and the global scope of the sanctuary's message. One of the most powerful aspects of the sanctuary of Fatima is its simplicity. Pilgrims walk on their knees across the stone path to the chapel, often in silence or in prayer. Candlelight processions, held almost every night, fill the plaza with a gentle glow and an atmosphere of profound reverence. Many come seeking healing, physical, emotional, or spiritual, and leave with a sense of peace. Fatima has touched not only ordinary believers but popes as well. Pope John Paul II, who credited Our Lady of Fatima with saving his life during the 1981 assassination attempt, made multiple pilgrimages here and had a bullet from the attack placed in her crown as an offering. What makes the sanctuary of Fatima truly unique is not just the story of the apparitions, but the enduring message of hope it offers. In a century marked by war, upheaval, and change, Fatima has remained a quiet voice calling for prayer, penance, and peace. It is a place where the modern world meets the eternal, a sanctuary where the miraculous continues to feel possible. Number 5 on our list is not just a sacred place. It is a monument to humility, a spiritual beacon nestled in the hills of Umbria. This is the Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi, a pilgrimage site visited by millions each year, dedicated to one of the most beloved and radical figures in Christian history. The story begins with Giovanni di Pietro di Bernardone, better known as Francis of Assisi, the wealthy merchant's son who gave up everything to live in poverty, serve the poor, and follow the gospel with complete devotion. He wandered barefoot, preached to birds, and called the sun and moon his siblings. In an age of power and opulence, his message was a quiet revolution of peace, simplicity, and love. When Saint Francis died in 1226, he was already revered across Europe. Just 2 years later, in 1228, Pope Gregory IX canonized him and laid the foundation stone for a grand basilica to house his remains. What followed was the construction of a spiritual masterpiece that would blend architecture, theology, and art in a way the world had never seen. The basilica is built in 2 levels, the lower basilica and the upper basilica, each reflecting different aspects of Francis's life and legacy. The lower basilica is a place of silence and contemplation, with low vaulted ceilings, dim light, and rich frescoes from early masters like Cimabue. Here, beneath the altar, lies the tomb of Saint Francis. Pilgrims descend to pray before his resting place, many leaving handwritten notes or small offerings. The upper basilica, completed later, bursts with color and light. Its walls are covered with 28 frescoes by Giotto, a groundbreaking artist whose work helped bridge the gap between medieval iconography and Renaissance humanism. These frescoes are more than decoration, they are visual sermons, narrating the life of Saint Francis with vivid storytelling and emotional depth. They show him embracing lepers, preaching to birds, taming a wolf, and receiving the stigmata. One of the most powerful moments in the Basilica's story came not in the 13th century, but in 1997, when 2 earthquakes struck Umbria. The Basilica was badly damaged, frescoes crumbled, walls cracked, lives were lost. But the world rallied. An international team of experts worked tirelessly to restore the site, using fragments as small as postage stamps to piece the artwork back together. The restoration became a symbol of resilience and devotion, echoing the spirit of the saint himself. Legend and myths around the site, as well. It is said that when Francis died, a flock of larks filled the sky over Assisi. Others believe that the fragrance of roses can still be sensed near his tomb. And some pilgrims claim to feel an inexplicable sense of peace the moment they enter the basilica's walls. More than just a church, the Basilica of St. Francis is a living testimony to compassion, humility, and the radical beauty of simplicity. It continues to inspire not only the faithful, but also artists, environmentalists, and seekers from all walks of life. To walk through its corridors is to journey through the soul of a man who gave up everything and, in doing so, changed the world. Number 4 on our list draws more than 6 million visitors each year, not for its architecture or royal history, but for what many believe to be one of the greatest miracles of modern times. This is the sanctuary of Our Lady of Lourdes, nestled at the foot of the Pyrenees in southern France. The story begins in 1858, when a 14-year-old peasant girl named Bernadette Seville claimed to have witnessed a vision while gathering firewood near the grotto of Seville. In the hollow of the rock, she saw a woman dressed in white, with a blue sash and golden roses on her feet. The vision didn't speak at first, but Bernadette was transfixed. Over the following months, the mysterious lady appeared 18 times, each time delivering messages of prayer, repentance, and humility. During one of these apparitions, she instructed Bernadette to dig in the ground. From that spot, a small spring emerged, one that has flowed continuously ever since. The woman finally identified herself as the Immaculate Conception, a title that shocked many at the time and reinforced belief that the visions were of the Virgin Mary. The local authorities were skeptical. Bernadette was interrogated, doubted, and ridiculed. But she never wavered in her testimony. Eventually, the church launched an investigation. After years of examination and countless reports of miraculous healings, the apparitions were officially recognized by the Catholic Church in 1862. The sanctuary began to grow rapidly. Today, the complex includes the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception, towering above the grotto, the Rosary Basilica, completed in 1889, and the Basilica of St. Pius X, a massive underground church built in the 20th century to accommodate the growing flood of pilgrims. But the heart of Lourdes remains the grotto itself, the site where Bernadette knelt, prayed, and spoke with the mysterious lady. Pilgrims come by the millions to touch the rock, fill bottles with spring water, and participate in the candlelit processions that light up the evenings with songs and silence. The waters of Lourdes have become legendary. Over 7,000 healings have been officially reported, with 70 confirmed miracles recognized by the Vatican after rigorous medical and theological evaluation. Many others describe profound spiritual or emotional transformations. There is even a dedicated medical bureau in Lourdes that investigates each case with scientific objectivity. Bernadette herself never sought fame. She entered a convent and lived the rest of her life in seclusion, dying at the age of 35. Her body, found to be remarkably well preserved decades after her death, rests today in the sanctuary of Nevers. She was canonized in 1933, and her story continues to touch hearts around the world. The myths of Lourdes are not about grand visions or dramatic spectacles. They are about quiet endurance, faith against all odds, and the power of one girl's unwavering belief. Whether you come as a believer, a skeptic, or a seeker, the sanctuary of Our Lady of Lourdes offers something more than physical healing. It is a place of peace, reflection, and hope. For many, it is a reminder that miracles, however small, may still live among us. Number 3 on our list, towers above the skyline of one of Germany's most historic cities. With its twin spires reaching 157 meters into the air, Cologne Cathedral is not just an architectural marvel, it's a symbol of perseverance, ambition, and faith that spans over 800 years. The story of this majestic Gothic cathedral begins in 1248, when construction started with the purpose of housing one of the most sacred relics in Christendom, the Shrine of the Three Kings. These golden reliquaries are believed to hold the remains of the Magi, also known as the Three Wise Men, whose journey to Bethlehem is immortalized in the Nativity story. The relics had been transferred from Milan to Cologne by Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, and the city saw an opportunity to become a major pilgrimage destination. But building a cathedral worthy of such relics was no small task. The design followed the high Gothic style of French cathedrals like Amiens and Chartres, with an emphasis on verticality, light, and awe. The choir was completed in the 14th century, but construction slowed over time and eventually halted altogether in 1473, leaving a massive crane atop the south tower as a reminder of a dream paused in midair. For nearly 400 years, the unfinished cathedral stood as a shell, weathered by wars, revolutions, and changing tastes. Yet it was never forgotten. Then, in the 19th century, fueled by a wave of romantic nationalism and renewed Catholic identity, the people of Cologne and the Prussian monarchy decided to complete the project. Using original medieval plans that had been miraculously preserved, construction resumed in 1842 and was finally completed in 1880, exactly 632 years after it began. Today, Cologne Cathedral is the largest Gothic church in Northern Europe and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Its twin towers are still among the tallest structures in Germany, dominating the Rhine River and visible from miles away. Inside, the cathedral is bathed in filtered light from dazzling stained glass windows, some of them centuries old, others modern masterpieces like the pixelated window by artist Gerhard Richter. Pilgrims and tourists alike flock to the Shrine of the Three Kings, housed in a golden sarcophagus behind the high altar. The shrine itself is a masterpiece of medieval metalwork, adorned adorned with over 1,000 gemstones and intricate reliefs. For believers, it is more than just an artifact, it is a spiritual magnet that draws millions in search of wonder and connection. And then there are the legends. One myth tells of the cathedral's architect making a deal with the devil to ensure the ambitious construction would be finished. In return, the devil demanded the soul of the first person to enter. The builders, according to the story, outwitted him by sending in a wolf. The animal's soul, it is said, still roams the cathedral's foundations. Cologne Cathedral also endured the ravages of the Second World War. Despite sustained bombing that devastated much of the city, the cathedral remained standing, a battered but unbroken sentinel. Its survival was seen as miraculous, and even Allied pilots reportedly used it as a navigational landmark. To stand before Cologne Cathedral is to witness the epic arc of European history, crusades, empires, wars, and faith, all written in stone and glass. It is more than a church. It is a symbol of endurance, unity, and the eternal human desire to reach toward the heavens. Number 2 on our list is not just one of the most visited cathedrals in Europe, it is the very heart of the Catholic world. St. Peter's Basilica, located within the tiny borders of Vatican City, draws around 10 million visitors each year and stands as a monument to both divine inspiration and human achievement. Its story begins with a tomb. Beneath the towering dome and marble floors lies what many believe to be the final resting place of Saint Peter, one of the 12 apostles of Jesus and the first bishop of Rome. According to early Christian tradition, Peter was martyred in Rome under Emperor Nero around 64 AD, crucified upside down at his own request, feeling unworthy to die in the same manner as Christ. He was buried in a nearby necropolis on the Vatican Hill. In the 4th century, Emperor Constantine, the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity, ordered the construction of a basilica over the site of Peter's grave. This old St. Peter's Basilica stood for over 1,000 years, serving as a spiritual center for Christianity. But by the 15th century, it was crumbling. The church needed a structure worthy of its growing influence, and a symbol of eternal glory. In 1506, Pope Julius II laid the foundation stone for a new basilica, one that would take over 120 years to complete. The project brought together some of the greatest minds of the Renaissance, Bramante, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Bernini. Each left their mark on the structure, resulting in a blend of artistic genius and architectural brilliance. Michelangelo's contribution is perhaps the most iconic. At the age of 71, he took over the project and redesigned the dome, crafting what is still the largest dome in the world. Its soaring height and perfect proportions became the model for countless other domes across Europe and the Americas. Inside the basilica, every corner is steeped in grandeur and symbolism. One of the most famous features is Michelangelo's Pieta, a sculpture of the Virgin Mary cradling the body of Christ. Created when the artist was just 24 years old, it is the only work he ever signed. The bald Aken, a towering bronze canopy over the high altar, was designed by Bernini and cast from bronze taken from the Pantheon. But the Basilica is more than a collection of masterpieces. It is a place of pilgrimage, a setting for papal ceremonies, and a spiritual refuge for the millions who visit. Pilgrims often descend into the Vatican grottos, beneath the church, to pray near the bones believed to be Peter's. The holy door, sealed shut except during Jubilee years, symbolizes the opening of a spiritual journey and the promise of renewal. Legends and myths have swirled around the Basilica for centuries. One tells of a mysterious marble figure in the crypt whose foot has been worn down from centuries of pilgrims touching it for blessings. Another whispers of secret papal tombs hidden deep beneath the altar, and of underground tunnels leading to long-forgotten chapels. St. Peter's is not officially a cathedral. The Pope's Cathedral is actually the Archbasilica of St. John Lateran, but its stature in the eyes of the world is unmatched. It stands not just as a house of worship, but as a beacon of artistic excellence, theological power, and timeless beauty. To gaze up at the dome from St. Peter's Square, surrounded by Bernini's sweeping colonnades, is to feel the weight and wonder of centuries. Here, faith, art, and history meet, and the result is nothing short of awe-inspiring. Number 1 on our list is more than just the most visited cathedral in Europe. It is the soul of Paris, a masterpiece of Gothic architecture, and a symbol of resilience that has stood at the heart of French history for over 850 years. Notre-Dame de Paris, or Our Lady of Paris, welcomes around 12 million visitors each year. And while recent tragedy struck its iconic spire, the story of this cathedral continues to inspire the world. Construction began in 1163, during the reign of King Louis VII. It was intended to replace an earlier church and mark Paris as a center of growing royal and religious power. The first stone was laid in the presence of Pope Alexander III, and what followed was over a century of architectural ambition. Completed in 1345, Notre-Dame blended French Gothic artistry with structural innovation, flying buttresses, ribbed vaults, and massive rose windows filled with light and symbolism. The western facade, with its twin towers and gallery of kings, became a defining image of Paris itself. Each element tells a story, from the gargoyles, designed to channel rainwater and frighten away evil, to the statues of saints that peer out over the Seine. The cathedral's grand organ, medieval bells, and 13th century stained glass make it as much a living museum as a house of worship. But Notre-Dame is also a cathedral of legends. One of the most enduring myths comes from the hunchbacked bell ringer named Quasimodo, brought to life in Victor Hugo's 1831 novel The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Hugo's work helped spark a renewed appreciation for the neglected cathedral, which had fallen into disrepair after the French Revolution. His story didn't just revive interest, it helped save Notre Dame. In the 1840s, architect Eugene Viollet-le-Duc led a full-scale restoration, adding the now famous spire and repairing damage inflicted during decades of political upheaval.
cathedral has been a silent witness to the rise and fall of empires. In 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte crowned himself Emperor of the French under its vaulted ceiling. In 1944, as the Allies liberated Paris, the bells of Notre-Dame rang out across the city. Through revolutions, wars, and centuries of change, it stood as a sanctuary and a symbol. Then came the fire. On April 15, 2019, flames engulfed the cathedral's roof, collapsing the spire and threatening the very structure. The world watched in horror as smoke curled into the Parisian sky. But just as quickly, the world rallied. Donations flooded in. Restoration began immediately. And remarkably, much was saved. Its famous towers, its rose windows, and the organ survived the inferno. The crown of thorns, a relic said to have been worn by Christ himself, was rescued by brave firefighters. Today, Notre-Dame is in the midst of a painstaking restoration, aiming to reopen by 2024, in time for the Paris Olympics. The work is both a technical challenge and a profound act of cultural preservation. Each stone reset, each beam lifted, is a testament to the enduring love the world has for this cathedral. To visit Notre Dame is to stand at the crossroads of history, myth, and faith. It is a place where architecture becomes poetry, where legends are carved into stone, and where every shadow tells a story. Even in its damaged state, it remains the beating heart of Paris, a symbol not of what has been lost, but of what endures.